What would you do if a stranger from the stars told you something that shattered everything you believed about faith? If his last breath carried the name you've tried not to say for years? I didn't plan to believe him. I didn't even plan to live through that night. It started with a sound. Not a crash. Not thunder. It was like the sky held its breath, and something immense exhaled across the cornfields. I was driving home on County Road 17, windows cracked, hands stiff on the steering wheel. The smell of wet earth blew in through the gap. The radio was off. I didn't want music. Just the sound of tires on cracked asphalt, and the dull thud of my own thoughts hitting the inside of my skull. It was late. Past midnight. One of those middle-of-the-night hours that belong to secrets and nurses and people like me, who couldn't find their way to sleep even if it were handed to them. I'd stayed late at the hardware store. And even later just, sitting in the parking lot, holding my phone, not pressing the call that I had been avoiding. My sister had texted earlier, "You going to talk to Pastor Dean? He asked about you." I didn't reply. I hadn't stepped into a church in over a year, not since everything fell apart and the word faith felt like a bruise I didn't want to touch. The exhale came as I passed the old silo, the one with graffiti that's been faded by sun and winter. The air went strange, like the warm and cool traded places, and a hum slid through the car doors and into my bones. I slammed the brakes. The tires squealed, dust bloomed and drifted. That was when I saw it. A light low on the horizon, above the fields. At first I thought it was a plane. A crop duster. A drone. But it moved like it was thinking its way forward, like it had to remember how to be in our sky. The lights pulsed, soft and pale, inhaling and exhaling the way a chest rises when a sleeper dreams. It skimmed, hesitated, dipped. Then a flare, a sudden sharp white that cut the dark. The cornfield rippled in a wave that moved from the far line of trees toward the road, a black ocean tipped with light. I pulled over. Sat there breathing hard, trying to decide how stupid I was willing to be. In the silence after the hum, the night sounds returned in layers. Crickets, frogs, the far-off bark of a dog. My heart beat too loud. Then I saw the fire. Not flames exactly. Not like a brush fire. More like drops of light hitting the ground and vanishing, like a quiet rain of sparks. I thought about calling 911. My hand went to my phone. But something in me, curiosity, fear, something hungrier than both, made me push the door open and step into air that smelled like rain and electricity. The gravel bit into my sneakers. I shut the car door softly, like I didn't want to wake anyone. There was a path through the corn. Newly made, stalks smashed down in a tight corridor. The dirt was warm. I held my breath and stepped into the rows. Above me, leaves hissed and rubbed together. My shoulders brushed them. The world narrowed to a tunnel with a faint glow ahead. I was half convinced I'd find a burning drone. Or a prank. Or nothing. I walked faster. Then I jogged, crunching broken stalks, arms out for balance. The glow brightened, blue-white flickering. The smell hit me, metal and ozone and something like mint crushed underfoot. It raised the small hairs on my arms. The path opened into a little clearing, where the corn had been flattened in a rough oval. In the center lay a shape. Not a ship, not exactly. Like a shell, like something grown rather than built, glossy and smooth with a skin that shivered when the breeze touched it. It pulsed with a weak light, veins of it moving along the curves. The air around it hummed. I should have run. I should have gone back to the car and put miles between me and whatever this was. But my feet carried me forward, slow, like I was approaching a deer tangled in a fence. My mouth was dry. My hands shook. There was a crack down the side of it. Inside, shadows moved. The hum dipped, then rose. I heard breathing. No, not quite that, but something like it. A slow intake, a slower let go. I edged to the crack and peered in. And I saw him. If I say alien, your mind paints a picture. Big head, black eyes, all the wrong cultural artifacts. He didn't look like that. He looked like a person would look if the idea of a person had been sketched by someone who had studied us for a long time and still didn't want to scare us. His skin was pale in a way I don't have words for, like the underside of a fish in a river, like moonlight on a sheet. Beneath it, faint lines of light flowed and faded, like fireflies under a thin cloth. His face was gentle. That's the word that keeps coming. Not beautiful. Gentle. Eyes like water in shade. A mouth that looked like it had learned to smile, and used it rarely because it understood the cost. He was crumpled against the side, one hand, I say hand. It had 3 long fingers, translucent at the tips, pressed to a wound. The light there was darker, flickering. The whatever it was had torn. He was leaking light. He looked up at me. And I lost my breath. Not because he was alien. Because in that look I saw something I recognized, and it made my chest ache. Exhaustion. Resolve. A quiet acceptance that this was going to end soon, and a desire to give someone one more thing before it did. I had nothing to say. My mind was static. I took a step back, then forward again. My hand lifted, then fell. He spoke first. Or I think he did. I never quite figured out if I heard his voice in the air or in my head, or in that part of us where we tell ourselves stories and call it prayer. Do not be afraid. Old words. Maybe a coincidence. Maybe not. They washed over my panic like a hand smooths wrinkled cloth. My lungs remembered how to work. I'm not, I started to say, and then a laugh fell out of me, high and more like a gasp. I am. His mouth tilted. Not quite a smile. Approval, maybe. You came. I nodded because that was true. Do you need? I gestured helplessly. Help. He looked around the inside of his ship. The light flickered and dimmed. He lifted his hand away from the wound, and the light there fluttered like a candle about to go out. He pressed it back. No. My heart went hard in my chest. No. I will end, he said, and the way he said it made it sound as ordinary as I will sleep. He tilted his head. You have a word, but it is too heavy. He blinked, like he was searching for something he had misplaced. Die, I whispered. He nodded slow. Die. He tasted the word like he might spit it out. Then he looked at me again. But you came. Yeah. I heard, I saw. I motioned to the broken blades around us. I thought it was a plane. I thought maybe someone needed. My voice cracked. All the nights I had arrived too late crashed into me. I swallowed them down. He watched me, taking me in, the way a doctor does when they're trying to see past your capable smile. You carry something heavy, he said. You keep it in your chest, and you hold your breath so it will not rattle. That made me take a step back. I almost turned and walked. I could leave. This was insane. This wasn't real. It was a dream or a hallucination or a story I would tell myself when the house was too quiet, and it got harder to stand being alone in it. But then the hum dipped again, and the light around us shivered. His face flinched, barely, and the impulse to run broke like a dry stick. I moved forward into the crack into the ship and crouched beside him. The cool of the surface seeped through my jeans. The smell of mint was stronger here, mixed with something like pine sap, resinous and clean. What can I do? I asked. He looked at my hands, then at my face. Listen. I laughed again. A dry sound. To what? To what I came to give. I opened my mouth. Shut it. There was something about the way he said give, like he was placing a stone in my palm. I nodded because nodding was easy. He blinked slowly. We listen in the dark. We are a listening people. We tune our days to the long music between the suns. We heard your name among the stars. I frowned. You heard my name. I almost said it, my name, and then stopped, suddenly aware of the weirdness of offering it to a dying not human. He tilted his head. Not your small name. Your old name. The one you forget until you need it. The one you sing when your mouth is closed. The name they gave the light that walked among you. Tell me the human word. I felt the floor tilt under me. My chest went tight. It wasn't like he said it with force. He said it with gentleness, and that made it impossible to dodge. I swallowed. The mint air burned a little. Jesus, it came out thin. His eyelids lowered and lifted. He almost smiled, a faint curve. His fingers loosened on his wound. Yes, that's the word you use. He looked somewhere past me for a moment, and his eyes filled with a brightness that made me think of sunrise through ice. We call him many names. None of them are large enough. I was shaking. Not like fear. Like standing outside after a long flu and realizing the wind is a thing, and it pushes on you. My mouth was dry again. You came because of Jesus. We came because we heard a story of a world where the source took on weight, he said, and as he said it, his voice, mind, whatever, brought with it an image of something so large lowering itself into something small with a gladness that broke me. Where the one who holds all became held. We listen for that story. We always have. I could hear my heart beat louder than the wind in the corn. You believe in him. Believe, he repeated, tasting the word. We belong to him, the way your body belongs to your breath. But he shifted, a flinch across his features. The light near his wound stuttered. But we forget. We all forget. Every world forgets in its own way. Every world makes fences, and then asks why they are alone. My throat tightened. I stared at his hand, at the way light pressed out between his fingers in thin threads. Why are you telling me this? And underneath that, why me? He blinked. Because you came. That felt too simple. It folded something in me. Lots of people could have come. He tilted his head, and the look he gave me was so much like what my mother used to give me when I said something she knew was me putting up walls. He didn't say the next thing out loud. It came like a quiet breath. You have been waiting for a voice that is not trying to sell you a god. I don't remember moving, but my hands were on my knees, gripping hard, and my head was down. I had not thought about my mother in days. I had not thought about the last time I saw her in months. Or I thought about it too much. The hospital. The beeps. Me in the chair, exhausted. Me thinking of tomorrow's shift. Me leaving. Me getting the call in the car, at a stoplight between the pharmacy and a church I did not go into. Not in time. Not there. She had always said she did not want me to see her breathe that last breath. That it would be an act of mercy to miss it. But guilt is a tide. It doesn't care about the shoreline you draw. He watched my face. He saw it. He nodded once slow. You left before the end. You think that makes you a thief. My eyes burned. The old ache loosened its teeth. I didn't answer. It does not, he said. She did not die alone. She died inside a love that made her. And you carry that love. You are not a thief. You are a child carrying a door you think you cannot open. I swallowed salt. The ship hummed around us, soft as breath. The corn hissed and fell quiet and hissed again. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were calmer. He looked beyond me again, like he was seeing a horizon I could. In the old rooms where we learn to listen, we are told this. The source speaks in smallness, in moments, in people who do not think their lives are large. His gaze came back to mine. We heard that here, the one had a face. You call that face Jesus. We wanted to know what it looks like up close, in the dirt of a garden, in the ache of what you call grief. What? You came all this way for that, I asked. My voice wanted to laugh. It came out cracked. We came because when the source puts on your bones, he said softly, it means no distance is too far for love. We came because we wanted to see what it looks like when love holds a cup with shaking hands. Silence settled, heavy and kind. I felt small and also like something inside me was the size of a sky. He shifted again, his fingers pressing harder, light smearing like paint under his skin. He flinched. I reached out without thinking and covered his hand with mine. His skin was cool, like river stone. The light under it shone through my palm faintly, warming me from the inside. You are dying, I said. The obvious felt like the only thing to say. It held everything else up. Yes. He studied my hand on his. Do not be afraid for me. The door is not a wall. The door, I repeated, like tasting a word I had said before and forgotten the taste of. Do you have another word for him, for what you follow? He smiled then. An actual smile. It softened him, made him look younger, if age meant anything to him. We have a word that is not a word. It sounds like breath. You would think it is wind. You would think it is laughter. If I tried to tell you, it would fall apart in your mouth. He shook his head slightly. But when I heard Jesus, the first time from one who came to us by accident, it was close enough. He closed his eyes again, and the hum deepened like a sigh. In that sound, a thread pulled tight and snapped. My phone vibrated in my pocket. The real world trying to claw me back. I flinched and almost laughed at the absurd normalcy of a notification in a spaceship. It buzzed once, twice, stopped. I didn't look. He looked at my pocket. They are asking where you are. My sister, I said, because it would be her at this hour. He nodded. You will tell her. Not all. But enough. His certainty steadied me. Will they come, your others? I do not know, he said. I was not supposed to be here like this. I was to listen from the sky. But my vessel, he frowned. We misheard the wind. He looked up at the cracked side. Something small became heavy, and the heavy fell. I didn't know what to do with the image. I didn't care. The words had a softness that made me think of those nights after my dad left, when my mother would lie beside me in the dark and not scold me for crying, just breathe with me until my breath matched hers. He looked back at me. I need you to carry words, he said. Not like weapons. Like bread. A laugh did escape then, one shocked and genuine and slightly wet. You sound like the Bible. He did not ask what the Bible was. He smiled a little more. Your stories and ours touch hands in the dark more than you think. What words? I asked. My chest seemed to open and ache at the same time. His voice eased, slow, each sentence a stone placed in water with care so the ripples would reach the right shore. Tell them, he said, that the one you call Jesus is not the possession of any place. He is not a flag. He is not a line drawn in dust to keep the wrong people out. Tell them he is a door and a table, and the light that finds you when you think you have become invisible. I felt the night around us lean closer. Tell them he did not come to make humans less, he said, but to make them more human. More able to ache with each other. More able to say, I'm sorry, and I forgive you, and sit in the same small room afterward without needing to win. His fingers convulsed under my hand, a spasm of light, then eased. "Tell them the name does not undo pain like a magic phrase," he whispered. "It does not erase grief. It sits inside it. It keeps company with it until you can stand." My mouth trembled. "I don't know if they'll listen to me." "Some will," he said. "Most will not. But you did not come here to win. You came here to carry a flame in your hand. The wind will take most of it, but not all." He drew a breath. It sounded like it hurt. "Tell them this. On more worlds than you can imagine, in languages you cannot hear without changing, they tell the same story in their own kitchens. The one who made all things became small enough to touch, and in that smallness we recognized home." He was growing fainter. Not in voice. In presence. The way a person does when their pain is almost done with them. I thought of arguments I'd had with church people. "But what about?" I started, and realized I didn't know how to finish the sentence. The edges of doctrine, the fight over who gets in and who gets out, the way it all felt like a union meeting with a sacred paint job. My words felt tired. He saved me from them, with a gentleness that felt like a hand on the back of my neck. "You are tired of fences," he said. "So am I. Love does not ask for a password. It asks for a willingness to be seen." I took a breath. And another. I looked at his face and saw the lines there that no artist would have carved, and realized, in a moment that embarrassed me, that I wanted him to stay. Not for the words. For the presence. For the way he looked at me like a person whose breath mattered. "You will not be alone," he said, reading that in my face. "He is not a story you tell yourself to stop being afraid. He is a person you can talk to when you are." I closed my eyes, and in that dark a confession rose pure and simple. I have missed him. The admission surprised me with its truth. I opened my eyes to the glowing dim interior and felt the tears just slip out. I didn't wipe them. I didn't care. He watched me cry like it was an honor. I thought about the last prayer I prayed that wasn't bargaining. It had been a long time ago. It had been something like, "If you are there, I need you to be kind." And the silence that followed had felt like a no. So I had quit. Not loudly. Not with a Facebook post. Quietly. Like stepping out of a line and letting it move on without me. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew. I said it out loud softly, because it felt right to mark this. He lifted his other hand and touched my chest with his fingertips. Cool. Barely there. A spark went through me, gentle, like someone turning on a bedside lamp rather than a stadium floodlight. "You have been carrying a window with the curtains shut," he said. "You can open them. That is allowed." I let out a breath that turned into a laugh that turned into a sob. I nodded. The ship hummed and dimmed. The night leaned in. He lay back a fraction, like a man easing himself into pillows. His eyes tracked something above me, stars I could not see from inside the ship. He took a breath. "Listen," he said again. "This is the last." My heart stuttered. "Okay." He closed his eyes and spoke, and his voice had that tone that people use when they finally put down what they have been trying too long to carry alone. "Jesus is the name we learned for a face of the source," he said. "Write this on the inside of your hands if you must. He is gentle. He will not break you to fix you. He knows your language of fear. He knows how your breath shortens at night. He has walked in dark places without a lantern, so you would not be afraid to follow." I leaned in. The smell of mint was fading. "He will come to you in the kitchen when you make coffee in the quiet," he whispered. "He will come to you in the car at the red light when you finally stop rehearsing your arguments. He will come when you say his name only in your head because your mouth has forgotten how. That is enough." It is enough. His fingers loosened. The light under them bled, and then calmed, pooling like a little lake. Tell them this, he said, a breath now. Tell them I saw him. Not with eyes. With the part of me that knows home when it walks in. He opened his eyes. They were bright and full of something I had only seen a few times. When my sister held her baby the first time. When my mother looked at me across a breakfast table and forgave me without words. Tell them, he said, and this was the last, the very last, and when I think of this night I hear it above all the other sounds. Tell them Jesus is with you in the dark. He exhaled, and his chest did not rise again. The hum slid down to silence. The light under his skin faded slow, then slipped away like water soaks into ground. His mouth softened into that small half-smile that seems to belong to people who die without fear. I sat there, first with my hand still on his, then with both hands covering my face. The corn hissed. Somewhere a night bird called. The world narrowed to the weight of the sentence he had given me. I don't know how long I sat. Time is a fabric that twists under certain weights. When the hum was gone and the air cooled, I lifted my head. The ship's shell, whatever, looked dull now, a shape without light, a stone that had been mistaken for a creature. The crack remained, as real as my hands. I reached out and touched his shoulder. Cold. Still. Not frightening. The fear I had walked in with had leaked away and left me, quiet. I did something then that felt foolish and necessary. I closed my eyes and said his name. Not loud. Not like a performance. I whispered it like handing a friend a key. Jesus. It didn't echo. It didn't turn the corn to angels. It didn't fix my life. But it did something I don't even know how to tell you. It turned the room inside me from unlit to lit. Not bright. Just enough. I sat with him and said it again. This time I thanked him out loud for coming to kitchens. For coming to red lights. For knowing my language of fear. For not requiring me to be good first. When I opened my eyes, I expected the ship to have vanished. It did. But the air felt different. Less thick. I stood up slowly. My knees ached. My body had the heavy, grateful feeling you get after a good cry. I didn't know what to do with his body. The words felt wrong. Body. Alien. It was him. He deserved something other than being left in a field like a myth someone forgot to finish. I stepped out of the crack and stood under the sky. The stars were out bold. There was a streak where something had entered and torn the night. The smell of ozone had already thinned to the smell of grass and dirt, and tractors long gone. I took a breath and looked back in. I'll tell them, I said, and my voice did not shake. I'll do my best. Bread, not weapons. The wind moved the corn like 1,000 bodies shifting position in their sleep. I pulled my phone out and stared at the lock screen. 3 texts from my sister. A missed call. Her last text, "Are you okay?" I thumbed a reply. I'm here. I'll tell you tomorrow. I love you. When I looked up again, a veil seemed to fall, the way heat shimmer on a road disappears when the sun hides. The ship softened. The edges wavered. It didn't vanish. It became uninteresting to the eye. Like it was letting me go. Like it was stepping behind a tree and watching me walk away because it knew this was the right part. I stood there a little longer, because goodbye is a ritual and rituals matter even when you have no one to perform them with. Then I turned and went back up the path. The corn closed behind me. The night felt normal again, and by normal I mean the complex web of small sounds and soft air, and the occasional reminder that you are a body walking through a world that has survived countless griefs. At the edge of the road I stopped. My car waited, a dull blue line in the moonlight. I looked left and right out of habit. No headlights. I crossed and slid into the driver's seat and sat in the dark, key in hand, watching my breath fog the windshield in little bursts that looked like ghosts when I was a kid. I didn't start the car right away. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. Inside it was quiet. Not empty. Quiet the way a chapel is quiet after everyone leaves. A good kind of empty that's ready. I thought of the sentence again. Tell them Jesus is with you in the dark. I put my hands on the steering wheel and imagined writing those words on the inside of my fingers. Not as a tattoo. As instructions. As permission. When I got home, I went straight to my kitchen and turned on the kettle. The house held its old shape around me. The ticking of the clock over the sink sounded like a strange new animal I was sharing space with. I stood there and watched the kettle refuse to boil because I was watching it. I laughed. Not a big laugh. The kind that has been waiting a while to be allowed. I made tea. I sat at the table where there are still 2 chairs, though no one sits in the other one. I said his name again, this time into a room that had heard too many angry silences. It didn't feel like a performance. It felt like talking to someone I was not sure how to look at yet. I told him I was sorry for leaving before the end. Not just the hospital. The rest of it. He did not respond with words. But I could feel, in that odd way you can feel certain things beyond sense, the gentlest easing in my chest. Sleep came sooner than it had any business coming, and when it did, it wasn't full of panic. I dreamed about walking down a long hallway and opening a window. The curtains were heavy. They fought me. But I was stronger than the habit of them being closed. The morning did not greet me with trumpets. It was, in fact, resigned to the grocery list, the bills, the email from my boss asking if I could cover Saturday. I wrote back yes. I put on coffee. I picked up my phone and called my sister. She answered on the second ring. You alive? I smiled. Yeah. You sound different. Yeah. I stirred sugar into my mug and watched it disappear. I saw something last night. I rubbed my forehead. I don't, it sounds crazy. I live with 3 children, she said. Crazy as toothpaste on the dog. I took a breath. I'm not going to tell you the part you don't need. I am going to tell you the part that matters. Okay, she said. Her voice softened. I'm here. I met someone, I said, and my voice almost broke on the someone because that felt like the truest part. He was dying. And he told me a thing I needed to hear. What thing? That Jesus is with me in the dark. I stared at the fridge magnets like they might spell something back. I know that sounds like a bumper sticker. It was. She was quiet for a second, too. Then softly, I've been trying to tell you that for months. I know, I said, and I meant it. But I couldn't hear it from someone who thought they should tell me. Who do you think he was? I think he was, I said. I didn't have a noun. I didn't want to pin him down with one. Someone who listens to the dark and came as close as he could to tell me what he heard. She sniffed. When she spoke, her voice wobbled. Are you okay? I don't know, I said. But I think I will be. We talked about normal things then. The kids. The weather. The fact that the church ladies were bringing casseroles to Mrs. Jensen because her hip surgery went badly. I told her I might come on Sunday. She did not make a sound of victory. She just said, okay. You can sit by me if you want. After we hung up, I stood by the sink. I looked out at the thin patch of grass I call a yard. The light had that new, hesitant look it has on certain mornings. I touched my chest. The ache hadn't gone. It had shifted, moved further back, made room for other things. I did not tell anyone else, not at first. I tried to once, with a guy I knew at the store who liked aliens the way some people like baseball stats. He wanted to know the shape of the ship, the angle of the lights, whether I had seen a propulsion system that matched a theory he had. I said he told me, and he interrupted to ask if there had been implants. I laughed and handed him his bag. It wasn't that he was wrong. It was that he was asking a different question. I went back to the field 2 nights later. I left after midnight so the road would be mine. I walked the path into the corn. The place where the clearing had been was just plants. Broken, yes, but standing in their brokenness. The air smelled like dirt and last week's rain. There was no hum. I stood there and closed my eyes, not to conjure anything, just to say thank you where I thought maybe he had been. I said his not name in my head, the one that sounded like breath. It sounded like my own breathing, and that felt right. Days stretched. I took the words he gave me and tried to live like they were true. I said Jesus in the kitchen. I said it in the car. I said it in my head while I stood in a hardware aisle and told a man who smelled like sweat and misused authority that we didn't carry the kind of rope he wanted. When I forgot to say it for days at a time, I did not punish myself with silence. When I remembered, I said it as calmly as turning on a lamp. I went to my mother's grave. I told her I wasn't there when she died, and that I'm sorry, but I am starting to understand that maybe I was allowed to leave and still be good. I sat on the grass and watched ants do their unsentimental work. I felt the sun warm my face and imagined her hand on my hair, absent, strong. I told her about him. Not all. Enough. The first Sunday I went back to church, I sat on the back row and felt like I was walking into a classroom after missing a whole semester. The songs were the same. The stories were the same. The faces too. But it was like the walls had shifted half an inch. Like the room had been built around a door I never saw. When the pastor said Jesus, it didn't climb. It didn't ring like a bell someone kept hitting to get attention. It sounded like a name people would say in a kitchen while washing dishes together. When the plate came by, I dropped in a 10 out of habit and no one clapped. When they said the prayer, I didn't close my eyes just to prove I wasn't playing. I closed them because I wanted to listen, and it's easier in the dark. I started telling the story to people who would listen. Not strangers. Not the internet. People at my table. People who had earned the right to hear me be crazy. Some of them cried. Some laughed and looked at me like I was telling a ghost story around a campfire. Some nodded slowly. One woman, a nurse with tired eyes, squeezed my hand so hard it hurt and said, "I needed to hear that today." On the nights the old empty came back, thick and heavy, I would go outside and stand in the yard and look up. The stars were stars. No ship skimmed between them. No hum. No mint. Just cold, quiet light like the eyes of 1,000 animals watching me be human. And I would say the name, not to prove anything, just to keep company with my own breathing. I wondered sometimes if someone would come looking for him. If somewhere, a sky further away than I could point to, knew they had lost one of their listeners. I wondered if they would accuse us. If they would forgive us. In the wondering, I said it again, I am sorry. A private apology to a world that will never ask me for it. And then one night, months later, summer thick and choked with cicadas, I woke to that hum again. Soft. Fainter than the first time. Like someone trying not to wake the baby. I sat up in bed, hard a drum. I waited. It smoothed out. Faded. Gone. I lay back, staring at the ceiling. I said thank you in a small voice, and he didn't appear as a ghost to tell me whether I was making everything up. That was a relief. I love my imagination, but the truth had become heavier in the best way. I paid attention to people better after that. It didn't make me a saint. It made me a person who remembered that everyone you meet is carrying something they think will rattle if they move too fast. I caught myself saying, "I forgive you," in the quiet of my head about someone I had grown used to resenting, and the surprise wasn't that I said it. It was that I meant it enough to let it change how I stood in a room with them. There were days the sentence felt like a magic trick someone had shown me, and then I couldn't remember the steps. On those days I made tea. On those days I stood at the sink and watched the street and named what I could. Tree, sky, neighbor's cat, my own breath, the hum of the refrigerator like a tired choir. And then once more the name. Not to compel. To companion. Fear still came. Disbelief visited like a relative with a key. Awe arrived in small ways. Standing in line at the license bureau, watching a toddler offer a wet cracker to the man behind him. In our break room at work, when a coworker quietly slid a sandwich into the hands of another, without making a speech. In the way my sister's middle kid looked at me like I was a planet, and he was learning orbits. And revelation wasn't neon. It was the slow bolt sliding back on a door inside me, and the room filling with light not because someone turned it on, but because I had finally opened something that had wanted to be open all along. I still don't know what he was. I still don't know how to prove to you that I'm not making it up. I know people who have seen less and believe more, and people who have seen more and believe less. What I have is a night in a cornfield with a being whose light got out when it shouldn't have, and the words he put in my hand like bread. Sometimes, when I hesitate to say it again, when I think maybe the whole thing was exhaustion and grief, and a sky doing what skies do with meteors, I remember the way his eyes moved when I said the name. Something in him recognized it the way you recognize a song from childhood after only 3 notes. And the end poured softness in his face like a blessing. I think about the last thing he said. I think about it when the power goes out, and the house is a museum of shadow, and the wind throws branches against the siding. I think about it when I sit beside someone in a hospital room, and do not know what to say, and I remember that words are not doors and presence is. I think about it when I walk into the sanctuary, and forget to pretend I don't care, and let myself sit down like someone who is home and tired. I don't have a neat moral. I don't have a tidy sermon. I am not going to try to sell you anything, except maybe the idea that there are some rooms inside you where you keep brooms and old boxes, and you think nothing good expects to live there. And maybe you should go open the door and stand in that dust and say the name, and then breathe, and then wait. The first time I went back to County Road 17 in daylight, I found myself laughing. It looked like a field. It looked like nothing had happened. A tractor had cut lines through it. The world had moved on the way it does when you bleed in a grocery store, and the tile gets mopped, and the floor gleams again. But I stopped anyway. I stood in the ditch with my hands in my pockets and listened. And if you're waiting for a hum, I will disappoint you. I heard a crow. I heard the rustle of mice. I heard my own breath steady, a little faster than resting. It was enough. That's what it comes down to, I think. Enough. Not proof. Not the erasing of doubt. Not a constant high. Just enough for the next step and the next hour. Bread, not weapons. A name whisperable in kitchens and cars and cornfields and hospital rooms and the backs of churches and the front seats of pickup trucks and wherever it is you stand when the thing you have been carrying finally admits it wants to go. At night when I look at the stars, I don't ask for signs. I don't make bargains. A stranger from the stars told me a story that put weight back into a name I thought I had worn out, and in that weight I found rest. And ever since that night, when the wind moves through the trees and the sky leans low, and the world is quieter than it used to be. I don't pray for answers the way I did. I just stand where I am and listen to the dark and say the name and trust that being stubbornly, wildly human is enough for him to draw near. But what I didn't know then was that this encounter was only the beginning.